take a look at this. If you want a sweet potato casserole for your holiday gatherings coming up, and you want one that is tried and tested and true and oh so yummy, this is the recipe you want. Jump on in and make it with me. Hi, I'm Mary Katherine, and welcome to my table. All right, the holidays are coming up, and we are excited about bringing you some dishes, some that you'll expect that are probably staples at your table, and then maybe some new ones. Today, we're going to focus on sweet potato casserole. I don't know about you, but that's one of those staples for me that I have to have every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, major holidays that come up. It's just so good. And let me show you what I have. I'm using the recipe that I have had for probably 30 plus years. And it's one of those, it's old, written by hand before we had all the digital recipes. And this one is so yummy. So I'm going to share it with you today. I got it from a sweet old lady where we lived at the time, and it is just one of the best recipes. So stick with me, and we're going to make Leah's sweet potato casserole today. Now, the good news for you is that we are putting these recipes on our website. We're in the process of doing that now. So I will have this one on the website by the time we post the video. So when you see this, go to that first comment. That's probably where we will have the link to our website where you can see the recipe for yourself. And then we even will have a button where you can just print it up for yourself too. So if you want this recipe, it'll be easy to access. The first thing that we're going to do to prepare our sweet potatoes is just peel them. And I know you can use peelers if you want, but sweet potatoes are one of those that I just feel like it's a little bit easier to just do it with my knife. The peel, comes off pretty easily this way. And I feel like it's a little more difficult with an actual potato peeler. So I've just got a bowl here where I'm putting the garbage from it in just to make it easy to catch all together. And I'm just going to peel a few sweet potatoes and get them ready to boil. Okay, and then after I've got my sweet potato peeled and then I kind of rinse it off good, I just cut it in a few bigger chunks like this. It makes it cook a little bit quicker. Sweet potatoes are a very hard vegetable, and so they do take a little bit longer to cook. So if we just get them a little smaller, it makes the cooking time a little bit quicker. And then, of course, I'm going to have some water in my pot with them, enough to cover the potatoes. So I'm just going to continue getting the rest of my potatoes ready, but that's all you do to prepare them to boil. All right, now if you'll notice, this one's a good bit fatter in the middle. So with these, I do the same thing, but then with some of these bigger slices, I just go back and cut them in half again. Just kind of like that. And that's good enough. But that kind of keeps everything a similar size so that they'll cook pretty evenly while I'm boiling them. I've got a really big pot here. I'm trying to decide how many potatoes to do. I'm actually going to double my recipe today. That's one of the things I love to do when I'm already in the kitchen and making something that's a little more time consuming, especially for holidays where you may want to have something done ahead of time. I'm trying to make 2 of these today, so I'll have one for us to eat now. But then we'll also have one that I can put in the freezer and then just pull out ready to bake at the holidays. And you will never know that it was in your freezer for a little while. So I'm going to go ahead and put the casserole together with the exception of the topping, even for that extra one. So I think I'm going to do one more potato and then we'll probably have enough in our pot to do that double recipe. All right, and I've got my water up over the top of the sweet potatoes so they'll all be submerged. And I want to put it on medium-high to bring it up to a boil. About there. And then, this is pretty high up in my pan, and I don't want it to boil over. Let me show you one other trick I do for this. Get an old wooden spoon. For some reason, I think the old ones work the best. And just lay it over the top of your pan, especially when it starts boiling. You may want to put the lid on now while it comes up to a boil. But then when it starts boiling, take your spoon and just lay it across the pan like that. And for some reason, it keeps it from boiling out. It will boil and it'll come right up to it, but it will not come out of your pan. So I love that tip because it saves cleanup later on the stovetop. While our sweet potatoes are boiling, let's go ahead and put together the topping. We can do it now and set it aside until we need it, but we'll get it together. So we're going to take 1 cup of flour, and this is just plain all-purpose flour. But honestly, I think either one would do, self-rising too, but I just use the plain all-purpose flour. 1 cup of that, 1 cup of brown sugar. Remember the way that we measure our brown sugar, we want to have that cup packed. Okay, that's pretty good. And that's how you know you've packed it well, because it kind of holds its shape when it comes out. And so we're also going to add a couple other things. We're going to add some nuts, but I'm going to wait on that until we do 1 stick of butter. Now, I've used the salted butter, but honestly, you could do whatever you have. If you have the unsalted, it'll work fine too. And I'm going to go ahead and just chop these in smaller pieces just to make it easier to work with in the topping. So I got them about like that, and I'm just going to go ahead and give them a quick cut down the middle too, like that. Okay, get that one. Now I'm going to dump it in, and then we're just going to use our pastry cutter, and we're going to kind of blend all of this together. And once it comes together, then we'll go back and add those nuts. But right now we want to work that butter, and the butter is cold. At this point, it works in better if it's cold. Okay, now you can see it now. It's still pretty big pieces of butter, so we want to continue to work it until it's about pea-sized, little green peas. So let's keep going. Okay. Now at this point, you can see how the butter is much smaller, but you still have little bits of it, and that's kind of what you want right there. So get it to about this point, and then we're going to add 1 cup of our chopped pecans. Okay, and I've already got my hand dirty, so I'm just going to use my hand to kind of mix it around. You can use a spoon if you want, but... Okay, and this is the mixture that we will put on top of our sweet potato casserole. So we've got that ready. Are you team praline pecan topping, or are you team marshmallow topping? I know some people prefer the marshmallows, and you could do that with this very same sweet potato casserole recipe. Just make the casserole the way we do, and then instead of topping it with this, you could top it with your marshmallows at the end of the baking. But anyway, our house, for the most part, likes the praline topping, so that's what we're going to do for this one today. I'm going to show you this. Now that our sweet potatoes have come to a boil, I'm going to take the lid off, just like I talked about, and I'm going to put this spoon across the top, and that's going to keep our water from spilling out and making a mess. So now it's just a matter of letting them cook. And with these sweet potatoes about this size, it's probably going to take about 20 minutes. So I'm going to set my timer for 20 minutes, and then we'll poke them with either a knife or a fork and just check to make sure they're done and soft. Our sweet potatoes are ready. Let me just show you. This is all I do. I just get a knife or sometimes a fork, and then just kind of run it through one of the bigger ones. And if it slices right through, then you know it's soft enough and your sweet potatoes are cooked to the point that you want to make your casserole. So they're at this point now. So let's drain them, and then I'm going to get them in our mixing bowl and show you what else we mix with it. We're going to start with about 3 cups of the cooked sweet potatoes. So I'm going to dump them in our bowl. And then to this, we're going to add 3/4 of a cup of sugar. This is a 1 cup. So I'm going to do about 3/4. That might not be quite that much, but these are going to be plenty sweet. So that's going to be enough. And then we're also going to use a stick of butter. And I'm just going to add it in this way. It has been sitting out while the sweet potatoes have been cooking. So it's not just super chilled. But those hot sweet potatoes are going to melt this butter easily, so I'm not going to melt it first. And then we're going to use a splash of vanilla, about a teaspoon. I'm just going to guess on that. This is for one recipe, and remember I cooked extras, so I'll go back and make a second casserole for us later, but I'm just going to show you the one single recipe here. Now the recipe just calls for milk, regular milk. I happen to have a can of evaporated milk that I opened just a day or two ago for another recipe. And so I'm going to use evaporated milk just to use up this can. And to me, it makes it a little extra creamy and rich, but just know that it calls for milk, and that's fine. If that's what you've got, that's what it calls for, and it's delicious. Okay, so I'm going to use this up, about half a cup. Now I'm going to just put it in my mixer, and I'm going to mix it that way. You can mash it by hand if you want to, but to me, this saves a lot of work. Now that butter and everything has been incorporated into it, that butter's melted pretty well, I'm going to go back and add just the last ingredient, which is 2 eggs. And when those sweet potatoes are super hot, I like to add those other ingredients first because that kind of brings the temperature down of the sweet potatoes. And that way your eggs don't cook immediately when they hit the hot sweet potatoes. So that's why I'm doing it this way. Let me move that paddle back just a little bit, and I'm going to get my 2 eggs in. Okay? And be careful not to get shells. If you want to do them in a bowl first, so you can make sure that you don't have any shells, you can do it that way too. And then let's just turn it on again and mix it for another minute or so. Let's see if that got it. Yes, that's better. Let's go over here and get it in our baking dish. Now this is just an 8x8 dish, and I've already got it sprayed. And we're just going to pour this directly into it. See how smooth and creamy that looks? It's so yummy. And then we're going to take our topping. And I'm going to go ahead and put it on now before it bakes for about 30 to 40 minutes. And this topping, the recipe that I actually made for the topping, that's enough for my double recipe. So I'm only going to use about half of this. If you remember, it was a cup of flour, a cup of brown sugar, 1 cup of the chopped nuts, pecans, and then 1 stick of butter. So if you only want to make a single recipe, cut all those in half. Just use half a cup of flour, half a cup of brown sugar, half a cup of the nuts, and half a stick of butter, or 4 ounces. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on now, and I'm just going to use about half of it. And that is going to be a very generous serving, though. Make sure we get a few more nuts over here. All right. I think that looks good. You'll want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees and then pop it in for about 30 minutes. And if it's done at 30 minutes, take it out. It might need an extra 5 or 10 minutes, but we'll set it for 30 minutes. Now you can see how it looks right now, and it looks like it's pretty well set. I think I want to let it get just a little more brown on the topping, so let's stick it back in for a few more minutes. Now you could freeze this one of 2 ways. I thought about just letting it cool a bit and then putting it in a Ziploc bag, and then whenever you want to do it, take the Ziploc bag out of the freezer, let it thaw, put it in your casserole dish, and then put the topping on. But since I already had topping made this time, I'm doing it in a casserole dish. And I had some foil ones that were a good size for this. So I've just gone ahead. I've got the sweet potato mixture down in the bottom. And then I topped it with the rest of that praline topping. And then I'm just going to store it in the fridge like this. I think especially with that topping on, it's going to be fine because the holidays are not far away. So I'll be using it soon. But that's how I'm going to store it in my freezer. So just remember that tip. You know, if you can do a double casserole or a double recipe of something and store it well, then that saves time and cleanup later. So that's what I'm going to do with this one. Okay, here's our sweet potato casserole. Doesn't that look delicious? I let it go for just about 40 minutes, and you're starting to see that color on the top with the praline topping. So you'll want to let it cool just a bit, and that topping is going to be a little bit crunchy and going to be so yummy. Okay, I'm going to dig into it and get a bite. It's piping hot, so I'm going to have to give it a minute. But let's do the taste test. And I'm going to get a bite with a little bit of those nuts in the topping. And, of course, we want lots of that good sweet potato underneath. There we go. I think we got a little bit of all of it. That is so good. And it always brings back memories. Every time I make this and every time I eat it, of good times with Miss Leah and her husband Ray. And this is just my favorite sweet potato recipe. I have loved it all through the years. I've tried different recipes a time or two, but I always come back to this one. I hope you like it too. Give it a try today. Thank you for joining me today at Mary Catherine's Table. I'm really glad you were here. And remember, if you want some more content like this, hit the subscribe button. Be sure to turn your notifications on so you'll get notifications when we post new videos. Go ahead and visit our website. We have printable recipes that we're loading there. We're going to go back and load them for all the previous recipes too, so look out for that. And just join us here at Mary Catherine's Table. We always love to have you along. And remember, go out and find someone today who needs a little bit of kindness and give them some of yours.